Well, welcome OCC members to Katrina Chats With. Today I am with Amy Jacklin from Virgin Money, and we're going to be having a chat around different types of banking, what banking means to us as individuals and as business owners, and we're going to be tapping into Amy's vast knowledge of that world, which is hopefully going to enlighten me as much as you guys, because I'm rubbish with banking. So Amy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for today.
So we kind of, although I don't know you personally, this is the first time I've met you. We've met through mutual connections through our network, haven't we? And then we've continued the conversation online. And I think that's a really important thing, because, you know, we're actually facilitating something today that's happened off the back of somebody else having a conversation, which I think is amazing. So you are a growth manager, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I've just come into the role in Birmingham, not been in there very long, but what that means is, so what I do is I work alongside the store team and all of the other banking teams that work out Birmingham to try and not just grow our kind of contacts, grow our business, grow our customer base, but also work with the local community, work with charities, and eventually have the store, when COVID permits it, as a little bit of a venue for bits and pieces. So there's loads of things like co-working spaces, meeting rooms you can book out, and if you're looking to connect or doing different bits and pieces, hopefully I'm the person to speak to.
So that's a really good point that you make, is that sort of obviously banking is changing quite a bit, and most people do a lot of their activities online, don't they? So I presume that using the space that is, you know, the high street presence, and sort of using it in a different way is a really good thing. I saw on LinkedIn, though, that you've been part of Virgin Money for 3.5 years. So was this not so you've only just recently got into the growth manager role. How many other sort of high street presence offices or banks do you have around?
So we have our 8 city locations, which Birmingham would be a part of, and those would be, the other ones would be places like Edinburgh, Cardiff, London, where they've got the bigger stores, more space to use and more of a community outreach kind of program going. But as a network, we've got about just over 200 stores available. So in the West Midlands, we've got Coventry, Nuneaton, Birmingham, of course, Wolverhampton. And I think that's it for now, yeah.
Okay. And in terms of sort of how your role impacts sort of somebody like me, I'm a sole trader, and there are some of our members that are sort of small business owners. How does your role sort of like interact with somebody like me and the members of OCC?
In lots of different ways, hopefully. So we've got, of course, we can come and talk about, or you can come and talk to us about our personal banking products and our business banking products. We've got a wealth of knowledge in Birmingham, people who've been in business banking for a very long time. But it's also little other things that you might potentially be thinking about. So one of the things I'm looking at arranging at the moment is working with a charity who are looking to do financial wellbeing sessions with other business owners. So we're looking at maybe potentially putting that charity in contact with these business owners to see if we can help them help their colleagues with, I'm sure we all know, has been a very hard-hitting year in times, but also helps that charity outreach, helps them fundraise and helps them do their work and getting out to more families that they try and help. So it's all different things. So we're always looking for opportunities where you think, okay, is there any way that we can help here? So if you're a sole trader maybe and you're looking at expanding your business, is there any way that we can look at doing some kind of event in the store that might help you reach more potential customers, and lots of different things like that.
Brilliant. Okay. And what's the difference? Because you mentioned personal banking and business banking. To a novice, what's the difference between the two? And at what point, if you're a sole trader, should you start thinking about having a business bank account rather than the personal?
That's it. So it's all personal dependent. It's all looking at your personal situation and thinking, right, what would be best for myself? And I think everybody's financial needs are different. But with a personal current account, you can have as many as you like. There's no limitation. So even if you were a sole trader, you could potentially have one current account which you might have for personal reasons, and then another one for business reasons. It's also looking at kind of the limitations and things on the account. So for example, if you might be doing a lot of transactions that are quite large, our caps are at 30,000 per transaction, so little things like that. It could also be looking at the business side of things. So if you're looking at doing, I know maybe not for sole traders, but if you're looking at doing payroll and things like that, so a little bit more in depth, and if you're working with QuickBooks or other financial applications like the finance side of things and the managing the business of it, so that's be kind of where you might think, okay, I might be more suited to a business account. Generally, how it works is your personal current account is free. So this is always a really big one for us. And then when you start to look at business banking, that's where your charges might come in. But it's also looking at how you would bank generally and how you might manage it. So one of our customers is a green grocer. So he does a lot of cash transactions. So for him, it's quite important to have a bank that's on the high street where he can go and exchange cash and bits and pieces like that. Whereas potentially, so my mother-in-law's just started up a business, but it's all going to be virtual. So she's thinking to herself, well, actually, for me, it might not be as necessary to have a bank that's on the high street because she's not going to have that need of going in all the time. But then with that bank, if she's struggling to get a hold of someone, I'm sure we've all been on the phone waiting on hold for
Press
various
1 for
things.
this, 2 for this, 3 for
Absolutely.
this, and then button 99 usually is the one that you want.
Absolutely, yeah, we've all been there, I think, over the last 12 months where we're not sure, and it's sometimes easier to see someone face to face. So it's thinking about, is that the kind of thing that you want to have as well? Do you like that personal interaction with your bank? So it's all personal needs and different things like that. So yeah. Definitely.
In terms of sort of, we talked a little bit about, you know, not necessarily needing a high street presence all the time. If you haven't got cash, you didn't need to pop in. What should we be looking at when it comes to viewing online working and dealing with our banks? Because, you know, there's a lot of scams out there and people are very nervous, aren't they, about, you know, doing transactions online. I mean, I think we've all had to in the last year. And we are getting a little bit more confident with it. But, you know, in terms of sort of like the online banking world and where that's heading, you know, I mean, my daughter uses her watch to pay for things now and, you know, all sorts of things. What's happening on the online world, and how are you educating and supporting business owners to, you know, realise the potential of the ease of online banking and also remove the fear of, you know, scams and those kinds of things?
So that's something that we've just introduced recently, is our digital fitness sessions. So I'm sure we've all had horror stories of someone checking their account and there being money missing, and we've all heard horror stories about scammers nowadays, and the scams getting so clever and so good. It's almost a cat and mouse situation. As soon as you've heard of one scam and you've cracked down on it and you've educated people to realise that scam, 3 more crop up in its place, which is really horrible to see. But as an industry, what we've noticed is everywhere's online banking is getting so safe now and so secure that people are more likely to be scammed by what we call push payments. So that's where you would authorise the payment yourself to a scammer. Now, this is where we get really, really clever, and they will look for people that are potentially more vulnerable, which I think is awful. But it's where they, for example, for holidays coming up, as I'm sure we're all looking at seeing if we can get holidays, is they might advertise on a non-secure in a non-secure way. Oh my goodness, we've got this great deal, £200, 2 weeks away. And then you would go in, you would pop your card details in thinking, oh my goodness, what a great deal. and that's not what you're paying for. Or they might ask you to send a certain amount to another payment, or for some instances going into the bank, withdrawing that cash and sending it off, sending it away, or them picking it up, which is even worse in my mind. Some of the things we see. So it's really taken, so the government have a campaign called Take 5. So it's taking that time away. If you've seen a great deal, or if someone's rang you up saying, you know, you owe us money, we're from the HMRC, which is another big one.
I had that the other day.
Yeah, absolutely. So they'll ring you up from somewhere saying, you know, for example, the HMRC one, they'll ring you up and it'll be someone automated on the phone to start with, and they'll say, you owe us this amount of money, you need to pay immediately, otherwise you're going to be in big trouble, the police are going to come around your house, and all the rest of it. At that point, it's taking that time to go, do you know what, is this the way that HMRC would normally contact me? Do I think this sounds right? And have I had anything else to back this up with? So have I had any letters from them? Have I had any correspondence? If I've got an accountant or someone that manages the finances, that's something they're aware of. Is it something that's expected? And going, do you know what? No, I'm going to take some time away from this. I'm not happy with it, and sit back and leave it be. So on another tangent here, if you ever do get a phone call and you think it's a scam, what we always suggest to do is pop the phone down. So what they can do is they can actually hold on to that line and keep the line open. So if you use that same phone to say ring the police, or you know, to ring your bank to see, they can actually still connect to that line.
I've seen that where they pretend to be the person at the bank, so it's almost like confirming, but it's actually just them actually holding on to the line. Yeah, I've seen that
absolutely. It's really scary. So the advice is always, if you've had a unsecure phone call and you're a little bit worried, is to put that phone down, leave it for 10 minutes, half an hour at least. And if you want to double check anything, is using a different phone to double check anything.
Yeah, good advice.
So absolutely, there's so many things you can look at from this. Is what we suggest is the longer you have your passwords and things for your online banking, the more secure it is. So there's actually websites where you can go on to, and you can almost pop in your password and it will tell you how long it would take someone to crack that password. So for an example, an 8-digit password, it would take a couple of minutes to crack, as opposed to a 16-digit password where it would take tens of, decades to crack the password.
Yeah. And how do you recommend that we all keep an eye on these passwords? I know we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's really, really interesting, because there are sort of all the fears that I've got terrible memory. And I am probably one of the guilty ones that uses the most obvious passwords in very things. And I've got a bank account that I had to have I kept it on my old phone because it's the only way I could access it, because I'd forgotten all the passwords, because I know that you're not supposed to write them down. But do you recommend a specific password sort of software to help with that, so that you've got another extra barrier for them to access? Or do you think that, maybe there's another way of remembering passwords? What would you suggest?
So I think this is very personal, and I think it depends on the type of person you are. So one of my customers actually came in last week and explained what she does. So she has 2 notepads for all of her banking passwords, and she'll have them all at least 16 characters. So she'll have one book where it's got the first 8 characters, and she'll hide that away somewhere in the house. And then she'll have the second book where she'll have the rest of the password, and she'll hide that away in a different place. So I was blown away by this. I thought it was so clever. But you are right, there are loads of things you can download, loads of password managers and different places like that. But as well at the moment, so all banks have brought in something called 2-factor authentication. So this is where you've probably all seen it, where you buy something online and instead of it going through straight away, it might take you to the app, or it might ask you to pop in the one-time code that it's sent. So this is really important, where you keep all of your details up to date with your bank, because that would mean it's an extra layer of security. So if that person's got your card and they've tried to make a payment online, say, for example, if your purse has been stolen, or if you're like me, you leave it anywhere, that actually your phone would get a text and they would need to have your phone as well to make that payment. So it is really secure now with the two-factor authentication. And there are lots of other things. So your bank will also look at what transactions are usual for yourself. So it's almost software where, for me, it'd probably be Tesco's, and the occasional shop online.
Other coffee houses are available.
Absolutely. So I know for me, when I have my regular petrol station, if I don't go to my regular petrol station and I do a card payment that's under the contactless limit, I know automatically my card, it will just not do the payment. I'll have to pop in my PIN. So it's little things like that. So your bank almost...
So they're getting very clever, the banks, to actually, work out what people's usual patterns are. And if there's a pattern of behaviour that's out of the norm, that's when you usually get the challenges on, having to reinsert your PIN number.
Absolutely.
And I think that's absolutely brilliant. In terms of security, it is always such a worry, and no amount of what you guys do, because of what we were talking about just managing to get hold of one scammer and then they're on to the next one, so it's always like a cat and mouse. But I think that we as individuals have to take responsibility as well and keep our details as safe as possible.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you for sharing that. So before we actually started recording this conversation, and I know you mentioned it briefly when we were talking about the kinds of things that Virgin Money does, what should we, if we were looking to change a bank account or, open a bank account, what kinds of things should we be looking for in a bank? Obviously, as I said to you a bit earlier, it's a bit like somebody asking me which is the best networking event to go to. Obviously, it's Business Buzz. But for you, in terms of sort of like, a sort of a broad brush of things, what kinds of things would you think we should be looking for?
There's so many different things that banks do now, as opposed to almost maybe 10, 20 years ago, where it would be you walk in and you just almost sigh and you think, oh my goodness, what are they going to try and sell me today? And it's almost, previous to now, you almost dread going into the bank. We're trying to make it a little bit different. So everywhere has their own niches and things. So if you are quite tech savvy, there's lots of fintechs now that have gone into banking. So you've got almost your Revolut, your Monzos, that are all doing things differently, but in a digital capacity. But then you've also got some of the high street banks now. So, for example, Virgin Money, NatWest and Nationwide are getting a lot more ethical in their banking and a lot more community driven. So they all have different things now where they'll get involved in the local community. And I saw one now and I was really pleased to see that our local Nationwide team had gone in and helped their local doctor's surgery at the start of doing all of the jabs, all of the, gosh, I can't think of the word now, but all of the COVID jabs. So it's looking at different things like that. So a couple of things that we offer is, again, using our space in Birmingham, as you've got meeting rooms that you can book out free of charge, as well as co-working spaces if you're ever interested. But we also do a lot.
A customer of yours to go in there. Obviously, if you're a customer, then you can book out the meeting rooms, but you don't just have to meet with customers, do you? You can meet with outside people and bring them into the bank.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So it is something you don't have to be a customer to be a part of, but if it's looking at booking out the meeting rooms, it'd just be checking the availability and looking at the events and how many people are looking to attend what meeting ever you're trying to hold. We do a lot of work with schools at Virgin Money, so we run a free program called Make £5 Great. So that's where we'll go into local schools and actually run it with the Scouts. Not last year, the year before, and I really love this. So we will essentially lend each child £5 per head. So say if there's 10 children, that'd be £50. And then it would almost be a little bit like Dragon's Den, where we get them to come up with ideas for how they would make a business, the kind of branding side of things, as well as the kind of the money management side of things. So, okay, if they're looking at baking cakes and doing a cake sale, how much would the ingredients cost? How many would they make? And then it's facilitating that to get them to make these things. And again, with the Scouts, so we ran it so that they got a stall at Coventry Market just before Christmas. And the feedback we got from that was incredible. So all of the local business owners were absolutely loving it. So they were saying it was really nice to have children about and seeing them work. It really got the children engaged. They were absolutely loving it. So the ones that are kind of good with maths were really loving the pricing side of it. And then the ones that are shining stars were loving the sales side of it and talking to the local community. So it was really good. And then so we do ask for our deposit back or our loan back with no interest, of course, and then all of the profits they keep. So that was really good. It meant
they don't get a CCJ if they don't give it back. If they just went down the shop and spent it on sweets.
Definitely. So that I think they netted about just short of £200 profit, which meant that they could go and do nice things for Christmas. They could go out for the day, or they could invest in equipment for kind of future use. And there's no cap on how many times they could do this. So we're always looking for schools that are interested in doing that, or local community groups. In fact, what we did over COVID was we made a family-friendly version, which we didn't do the financial side of it, but we gave that information. So it almost has a learning program. So we gave that to the parents, so it gave them something to do with their children whilst they were homeschooling and bits and pieces like that.
I think the ethical side of it actually is quite powerful, because, a bank, if you just think of it from a transactional point of view, pretty much is a standard thing. You put your money in a bank, you get various different interest rates or whatever, but it's nice to know that what's happening in the community and the actual impact that working using a facility and a service actually is impacting your own environment is really valuable. And I think us as sole traders and small business owners, that is very, very key to us, because we don't have that large pot of money for our marketing to become the next Coca-Cola brand or anything like that. Ours, most of the businesses that are done, or most of the business that's done with small business owners, is word of mouth and community focused. That's how we grow. So knowing that big organizations like Virgin Money and others are actually really focusing on making a difference in your own community is really powerful. And that actually does give me a want to work with an organization like that. So that's really lovely to share. Thank you so much. So if we, obviously we've been talking for a while now, but if you were going to give us one piece of advice, what would that be? That's a loaded question, isn't it?
Gosh, there's so many different things you could talk about. My advice would be to take your time and to not not always go for the first offer. So the thing is with banks is there's so many about now. You've, like as mentioned before, you've got your high street providers, you've also got the digital side of things, and there's so much now that goes on which never did before. So it's just having a look and seeing what's available out there, because I think a lot of places now are having to change the way they do things. They're having to think about, okay, how can we get involved in the local community, or the different tech side of things. So it depends what you're after really, and just kind of investigating and finding out what is best suited to yourself.
Brilliant. That's a really good piece of advice. And the other question that I wanted to ask around that was, in your experience with word of mouth and engagement, we did briefly touch on, it might have even been before we started recording, but we talked about networking. How do you see banks engaging with networks, and how much of the face-to-face, because everything digital is very faceless, how important is your role, and how can we help you?
Definitely. So I think I'm so excited for when we do get to do things face-to-face again. I can't wait now. We're on the final few steps, but networking is all about local businesses, and I think Tesco did very well. So I don't know if you've seen, but Tesco did an ad campaign of, right, okay guys, go to your local pub, they need it more than anybody else.
Pint of beer,
yeah, absolutely. So I think it's everyone looking after each other. After, again, the year we've had has been very strenuous for a lot of people, and so it's kind of, I want to try and help as much as possible. So my aim would be to have networking events at the local store, so at the Birmingham store for myself, and looking at how we can do that in other ways. But it's reaching out and saying, you know, have we got, if I'm looking for maybe someone to do bookkeeping and bits and pieces like that, how can we help each other reach out to each other? And I think one of my big aims is to help local businesses grow. So if there's anything we can do to help our businesses grow, it doesn't just help the high street, it doesn't just help everybody that's looking to kind of keep themselves afloat, but it really does create that kind of community sense, and it helps everybody just get closer to where they want to be, I suppose, and get to the next day.
Brilliant. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Amy. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to put in the in your LinkedIn information as well, so that anybody that watches this video that's a member of the OCC can reach out to you and connect with you on LinkedIn, and they'll probably drop you a note and say, I saw your video on LinkedIn, sorry, on the OCC, and I'd like to connect with you, because it's been really great for you to give up your time to talk to us today, even though the audience is blind to you, like you can't see who they are because they're our members. But you know, it's been lovely and really fascinating and enlightening, because you know, I didn't really think about the ethical side of banking before, but you've certainly given me a lot of food for thought, and I'm sure that you've done that for our members as well. So it's been a pleasure talking to you, Amy. Thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much for having me. I have really enjoyed it today, and I will see you again soon, hopefully.
Definitely. Thank you. Right, let's